choices shape the market, our society, and our quality of life. That's why Euroconsumers helps millions of people in their daily choices, providing simple solutions to complex problems. Euroconsumers is a cluster of organizations, a network of people, a group established to protect consumer rights and well-being that brings consumers and companies together in transparent relationships of trust that respect their independence. Our deep understanding of products and consumption gives consumers a credible, expert voice worldwide. We bridge the gap between buyers and manufacturers, between supply and demand. And in this digital age, we create opportunities for all parties to come together in constructive dialogue, partnering to build a future of better products and services. Euroconsumers has the power of a global group that believes humanity can develop, grow, and change for the better, and that we can promote this by uniting millions of consumers in strength and speaking responsibly for them, while simultaneously engaging in relationships of trust with responsible, sustainable companies.
Welcome everybody to Start Talking, everyone who's watching live or who's watching or listening back to the recording. I'm Liz Cole, I'll be your host for today, and we are going to start talking about the magical world of food supplements and whether they're a health boom or a health bust. So the market in dietary supplements like vitamins, minerals, enzymes, botanicals is a really big business. They're marketed as a positive way to proactively manage our health and well-being. Step into any pharmacy, health food store, or even supermarket, and you'll find tablets, powders, gummies, and that promise better sleep, younger skin, healthier joints, or a stronger immune system. And online, we have brands that can personalize ads to particular age groups or demographics, and influencers who can make the most of new social commerce to endorse lots of miracle cures. But what can we gain or lose from taking food supplements? Does the EU legislation on health claims need an update? How has social media changed the way we think about our health? And how can we equip consumers with the right information to be empowered to make good choices for their health and nutrition? So to start talking about all of these things, we've got 4 wonderful panelists with us today. And I'm going to introduce you first of all to Julie Frère, who is Head of Communications and Public Affairs at Testachat. Testachat is the biggest consumer organisation in Belgium, and Julie is a qualified lawyer who has worked there for 10 years. She started there in 2014. So welcome, Julie. Next up, we have Dr. Rachel Kent. She is an author, researcher, consultant and lecturer in digital economy and society at King's College London. Her research looks at the effect of digital technology on our mental and physical health. Welcome, Rachel. Thanks for joining us. Next up, we have Livia Menichetti, who is Director General of the European Federation of Associations of Health Product Manufacturers. So a long title, for EHPM for short. EHPM was founded in 1975 as the voice of the food supplement sector in Europe. Welcome, Livia. And our 4th panelist is Becky Flint, who is an influencer marketing specialist. And she co-founded Pepper Studios, which is an influencer marketing agency. And remember, everyone watching, you're all part of Start Talking too. So please put your questions and comments in the chat and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So I'm going to turn to Livia Menichetti first. Can you tell us about your role and your organisation, and then set the scene for us? But first of all, by telling us about all these different words and terms that we might come across in the world of food supplements.
Sure. Thank you, Liz. First of all, thank for having me and for having EHPM. So as Director General of the EHPM, I represent an important group of reputable manufacturers and distributors and suppliers who are based in 17 European countries. and which are dedicated to producing, distributing safe, science-based, high-quality food supplements, and at the same time to provide accurate, meaningful, and truthful information to consumers about their nutritional value, but most importantly, their use. Regarding the terminology, you mentioned some words. Some words that you currently encounter, let's say, in the world of food supplements. But let me tell you that the only legally defined, at European level, of course, term to describe the product marketed by our members, by EHPM members, is food supplements. Food supplements are defined, in fact, by Article 2 of the Food Supplement Directive. And they are defined as foodstuff, the purpose of which is to supplement the normal diet, and which are concentrated source of nutrients that are sold in some typical forms like capsule, pastilles, bottles, pills, sachet powder. So other terms that we might encounter, you mentioned some, you mentioned some ingredients that you can find in food supplements, primarily vitamins and minerals. Those are the most known and commons, but also botanicals, so plant-based ingredients, or omegas, for instance. Other terms like nutraceuticals, for instance, those are marketing terms. So really, when it comes to the EU, we refer to our products as food supplements. And for instance, there is also dietary supplement that is the legal reference in the US. So I hope I clarified a little bit the terminology.
Okay, thank you, because I was really wondering what nutraceuticals are. So it sounds great. It sounds very interesting. Julie Frere, I'm going to come to you now. Can you tell us a bit about Testachat and why it's interested in food and food supplements as a topic?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Liz, for having me here today. So, of course, we work on food because food is part of our day-to-day life. It has a very concrete influence on our health. It is not always easy to find correct information. There is a lot of marketing about what's being natural, healthy, zero carbon, without additives, without sugar, etc. So we help consumers find their way in this jungle and make the right decisions. And with regard to food supplements in particular, as Olivia just said, effectively they are initially destined to complement our diet by helping us maintain this adequate intake of certain nutrients and correct any nutritional deficiencies that we might have. But what we have seen is that over the years, firms moved further and further away from this original legal concept and now market products, as you said in the intro, Liz, to be slim, to have beautiful skin, to stay young longer, in good health, for sexual performance, to prevent certain pathologies, or even to replace a drug. And the distinction we have seen between food supplements and medicines has become blurred over time. And as a consumer organization, we think we play a really important role to debunk the true from the false claims, to analyze the composition of the food supplements, to submit complaints to the authorities in case of problems when necessary, and to obtain a better regulation. But I'm sure we will come back to this later.
We will certainly get into a lot more detail about the legislation and all of those things and how to keep the information clear and accurate. But before we do that, Livia, can I return to you to just give us a bit more information about where the sector is now? So who's buying food supplements and how's the market changing?
Yes, so let's say, who are the main customers for food supplements? So the main customer, if I can give you an overview or a summary, are young adults to elderly people who have a clear nutritional need if they, for example, follow a particular diet, such as vegans, vegetarian, or consumers with a particular dietary need related to the stage of their life, for instance, pregnant women, aging population, but also consumers that are following national recommendation on supplementation. There are national authorities that have recommended, for instance, supplementation of vitamin D, especially in the countries that lack sun. And unfortunately, I live in one of those countries, Belgium. But also we are seeing, Liz, more and more people and consumers that are taking more, let's say, full and active responsibility of their health, and are more and more informed about the nutritional value of what they eat, and also of the impact of their lifestyle on their own health in order to stay healthier longer. In concrete terms, this means that people dedicate time to find information and knowledge to adopt a lifestyle that is aimed at improving their well-being and reduce also the risk of developing certain disease. Then we will talk later about the claims, an important issue that Julie just raised. But I think that this is, let's say, if I gave a description of the customer, where customer can buy food supplements. Well, the market researches in the main, let's say, in the most important food supplements markets in Europe, which are Italy, France, Belgium, show that the first place in which customers buy supplements is pharmacies. Then, of course, there's a growing, let's say, percentage of people that is also buying in specialized online, let's say, websites like online pharmacies, for instance. And in certain European countries, they can also find them in health store, as you correctly said in the beginning of the seminar. How the market is changing and growing. Let's say the market is growing at a healthy pace due to the let's say to what I've described in the beginning, so an active attention from certain customers to their own health. Nowadays, we can say that the European food supplement market is worth approximately 18,000 billion euro, and there are over 3,000 companies in the EU, and those companies are creating more than 100,000 jobs in the EU. I hope I have replied. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a good introduction, getting a picture of the market and who's using it. So, of course, you mentioned that even if people are buying them in offline stores, not necessarily online, but I think, Rachel, I'd like to talk to you now about how people are influenced by the online world about health. So can you share a bit about your research and how this fits into the bigger picture of how people think about their health in an online world?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks, Liz. Thanks for having me, and hello to everybody that's joining live and catching up later. This is such an important question because the landscape has changed so dramatically, particularly in the last 5 years. I've been looking at the way in which our relationship with technology has changed, our relationship with health, our bodies, mental health and physical health for around, well, over 15 years now. And during that shift, it's been really interesting to see how digital health as a concept has really shifted in terms of, we used to kind of monitor and manage our bodies using much more kind of quantifiable tools like Fitbits and Strava, that kind of data acquisition. Increasingly, through the political shifts that have happened internationally and across Europe in the last decade or so, we see so much public health messaging towards pushing consumers to use these applications to monitor and look after their bodies from afar. It's cheaper for governments internationally. predominantly, and humans and consumers, as has been kind of outlined really nicely by Livia, have been empowered to kind of optimize their health through taking responsibility for their health. That shift towards kind of becoming a consumer of health rather than a patient of health is really where the landscape sits today. But amidst those political shifts and technological shifts has also been, of course, the rise of influencer culture and social media. And that has a lot to answer for, particularly when we think about COVID and the ways in which we have increasingly, as my research has demonstrated, turned towards social media for health messaging, information and guidance. And that got hugely exacerbated during the pandemic when we didn't know what was happening. We were turning to social media for guidance and support. Public health messaging internationally was relying on social media to get those messages out. So patients became consumers of health in a way where we now turn to, and a huge portion, particularly of the younger generation, turn to social media for predominantly their main health guidance source. So they're not going to the WHO, WebMD, those kind of online platforms. They're going to social media. And then we throw in the kind of lack of regulation. I know we're going to discuss this later on, so I won't get too much into it now. But the issues around misinformation, or those that may not be qualified, promoting food supplements and certain wellness products via social media platforms, and the lack of accountability that currently sits within these spaces now. And you have a huge amount of questions around the risks and how that can be very detrimental to our health, and how just challenging it is for the consumer now to figure out what is a reputable food supplement, what's actually going to help my health in what ways, who do I turn to get advice for these types of products. And so the landscape of digital health now is really, it's very much shifted away from those kind of quantifiable health tracking tools now to a really muddy space where consumers have to navigate a lot of information, but misinformation as well.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. That's really interesting, and it seems the perfect time to bring Becky in, who, Becky, I mean, you can tell us a bit about your background, and also some of the things Rachel mentioned there, alluding to influencer culture. Can you tell us about some of these weird and wonderful trends that you've seen on social media related to this?
Of course, weird and wonderful certainly is the word. So my background is that I work in influencer marketing. I'm a co-founder of Pepper Agency, which is an influencer first social specialist business. But before that, I actually started off as a social media content creator and influencer myself many, many years ago. So I can kind of speak to this from two sides, really. But in terms of the current landscape, and I mean, I would say that certainly social media is very cyclical. So there are a lot of trends that appear, but one of the early ones, the most memorable ones that I can remember, is when everybody suddenly started talking about apple cider vinegar and what is this thing. It didn't really seem to sit in most people's cupboards at home, but then it suddenly boomed through the power of social media and the internet as this great kind of health benefits ingredient that you absolutely must have and must try, no matter how off-putting the taste may be. Nowadays, there's a couple of other ingredients and products out there which are really trending, such as mushroom-infused coffees or teas with great benefits supposedly for the brain. You can take magnesium supplements to help improve your sleep. There's clean green protein smoothies and juice cleanses, which are very much popular through social media. And also one which has been trending very much recently is taking a cherryade drink to help you sleep at night. And these are all different trends that we've seen through social media. But is it always commercial where the influencers are involved? Are they always selling something? Or the idea is as easy as it would be to say yes, I don't think so. Because at the end of the day, the benefit for these influencers, I suppose, is also the classification of themselves as a guru, selling the idea of something rather than actually a specific product. If they can kind of increase their own authority within this category, it makes them more useful to their followers. And also there is that, good faith aspect of it. They think that it genuinely is helping them, and it might genuinely help their followers as well. The risk is introduced where it is perhaps not always the right fit for every single person, and giving this one-size-fits-all advice about supplements which might not actually be suitable for everybody.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's really useful, well, both of you, in showing that while there may be these categories in law and certain areas that we can define as a food supplement, actually, if you're a consumer in this world, in the on and offline world, it's part of a myriad of messaging coming through about what's good, what's bad, and what you need to be taking. So that's really helpful to bear that in mind. Why do you think, Rachel, I'll come back to you. Why do you think the idea of a supplement or as sort of one thing or a few things is so appealing, as opposed to, for example, eating 5 veg a day and going for more exercise? What is it about the supplement which you think appeals to people?
I think it's the presentation of a bit of a quick fix, but I also think there's a kind of wider philosophical and cultural prioritization of health now that we see very much across, the way in which governments are promoting health to us, the way in which we feel a responsibility to look after our bodies. And I think that when we see a lot of these lifestyles presented to us online, we want to aspire to similar types of lifestyles. We want to be as fit and healthy as possible. We want to optimize ourselves and our time. But all of these kind of terms like optimization of health and even food supplements, it's such a gray area about what that actually means and what taking this food supplement will mean within all of the other lifestyle factors that might be a part of your everyday digital as well as offline kind of health behaviors and fitness. And I think we are always increasingly looking towards that new fad and that new trend. And Becky mentioned about the juicing diet. And I remember in 2012, juicing was like a thing that was one of the first fads that influencer culture really started to pick up on. The Jason Vale juicing diet was something that I was really into when that first came out. And I think that it's definitely cyclical, but it's presented as such an interesting and kind of easy, quick way to ultimately fix our health, but also take control and agency over our health. And I think at such uncertain economic times, political times, I think that gives the individual a sense of agency and purpose about, well, at least I can do all of these things to manage my health. And that does give you a sense of kind of gratification and agency. And I think that that's the more kind of philosophical, cultural side of things as well.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. And Becky, I just want to come back to you. Why do you think some people are influenced so much by somebody online that they don't really know telling them something, as opposed to, say, their doctor?
It's a really good question. And I think, although we don't know them, there is this huge element, especially in social media influencer and audience relationships, which is very parasocial. It is built upon this feeling of trust, friendship, and authenticity, but it's actually very single-sided and it's very blanket. You hear stories of, fans going up to creators feeling like they actually know them as a person because they've watched all of their videos, but actually they are two strangers at the end of the day. But it's that similar, effect of essentially word of mouth. We listen to our friends, we listen to recommendations of people that we do know. These influencers feel like our friends, so naturally we're listening to them as well. And then it's twofold as well, because perhaps also sometimes is the official advice a little dry? Are the influencers delivering messaging in a little bit more of an exciting or relatable or personable way, or is it a mixture of skepticism as well? Do they think that official channels aren't giving them the the true information? They have to look to these fringe groups online to see if they can really dig towards the actual source of truth, however subjective that may be.
Okay, thank you. Things are quite far away from having an apple a day and those simple bits of health advice. Livia, you'd like to come back in here?
Yes, I would like to come back just to provide a message that might be useful for the discussion. As EHPM, we think that the primary source of nutrition is a healthy and balanced diet. So supplements are not going to substitute, are not meant to substitute a healthy and balanced diet. Is absolutely, correct, and people should eat 5 vegetables and fruits per day, and a pill or a supplement is not going to replace the nutritional value of that. But supplements have a nutritional or physiological effect and can complement their diets. So I just wanted to highlight that point also from the industry perspective. We are not going to replace, we don't pretend to do this. Healthy habits, healthy and balanced diet is and should be the primary source of an healthy lifestyle. Thank you, Liz. And sorry for interrupting.
No, please. Thank you. And Julie, I think this is relevant to you and your work as well, because as you say, you as a consumer group, you're working on multiple issues, and as well as food. And on the one hand, yes, we should all be eating healthily and being able to access healthy food, but that's not always possible, is it? Our modern diets, and it's not always easy to eat well. Do you want to say something about that?
Yes, thank you for letting me react on this. So first of all, it's true that we hear many things. We sometimes hear that our food contains fewer vitamins and minerals today than it used to in the past, and that people therefore need supplements to be in good health. So this is a bit of a tricky one because there's no real general scientific consensus on this, and the data that shows this is the data that dates back several decades that we're not collecting using the same methodology or with the same precision as today. So we cannot necessarily allow, this data does not necessarily allow us to draw really precise conclusions, although it should definitely be further investigated. What we cannot deny today is indeed that we eat differently than we used to. We eat more ready-made products. We eat sometimes ultra-processed foods, and they contain fewer essential nutrients. We eat also less fruit and vegetables, and this can, of course, have negative consequences for our health. So, and it's true that an unbalanced diet with little variety can lead to a shortage of certain vitamins and minerals. And I would also like to say that marketing from the agro industry for these types of products like ready-made meals and ultra-processed food is also partly responsible for this reason why Testasha is asking for more regulation, in particular when it comes to marketing to children. But what we see today is not exactly what Livia depicts. So we really sometimes have a bit of the impression that the promise that is made today by the food supplement industry is don't change anything, but take the food supplement and everything will be fine. And it's a bit like promising you'll get a good night's sleep if you take a food supplement containing valerian, for example. Even if you've been sitting up all day, you're very stressed, you spend 2 hours in front of your mobile phone before going to bed, so you're not really questioning the habits, but you're taking a food supplement. It's a bit like promising you will look extremely fit without doing any sports. So I think that before we rush off with food supplements, perhaps we should start indeed putting a bit more fruit and vegetables on the menu every day. And this is also something that Testasha communicates about, like affordable recipes with healthy products. It is possible, although of course we have known a period of great inflation that has not been helping, but it is possible when you eat from seasonal fruit, vegetables, etc. And if you have a balanced diet and varied diet, you can easily absorb enough vitamins and minerals. And if you don't, then maybe you can talk to a health professional and he will recommend to take some food supplements. But it shouldn't be the other way around. Not questioning the habit, taking a food supplement. Maybe questioning the habit, check with a health professional, and if the problem is there, then maybe the food supplement is in this case recommended.
Okay, thanks very much, Julie. Livia, I must give you a chance to respond.
Yes, just a few concepts here. First of all, I completely agree with Julie when she says that we can, as a consumer, because I want to highlight that before being the Director General of EHPM, I'm a consumer too. So for me, providing accurate and not false expectations to consumers is like a priority. So Julie mentioned, there are out there products that promise you a flat belly in 2 days, or promise you a very restful night of sleep. So I want to highlight that the problem with, let's say, not truthful labeling or claims, this is an issue, and it's not it doesn't, it's not related to the reputable companies that are out there and that the EHPM represents. Of course, we cannot control everything that is out there, but there are some tools that the European regulatory framework and national framework have put in place in order to control those, let's say, not trustful and not compliant, let's say, actors. Of course, I cannot deny, and as a consumer, I can totally agree with Julie, we should, control them. And let me say that those actors who promise magic, those are the biggest enemies of our sector, because then all companies have, need to address the lack of trust from both institutions at national and European level, but most importantly from consumers. So for us, it's really, I would like to highlight that, completely agree, but we will dive into the regulation afterwards, later on in the discussion. But let's say there are tools that at national and European level can, mitigate this effect and control this effect.
Okay, so we will come on to that in the next section. I wanted to just pick up on a couple more things on the online point. To Rachel and Becky, are you concerned about the targeting that can be done by platforms and advertising, and how that might be exacerbating the messages people get and the misleading information they're getting? Rachel, can I come to you first?
Yes, absolutely. And the short answer is yes. But I think to come to Becky's point earlier about the relatability aspect, I think when we go to social media, as increasingly the younger generations do, for health information, and particularly these types of kind of fads around food supplements, the mushroom tea being one of the latest ones, and the targeting that happens, we often conflate visibility with kind of authenticity or reputability. So we kind of perceive, well, if all of these influencers with all of these followings, all of these comments are circulating and promoting this product, then it must be something that's good and beneficial. And therefore that gets conflated with thinking, well, that's reputable. Actually, a follow account ends up being far more appealing for a consumer to relate to acknowledge, and to think, well, I'm going to follow that person's guidance because they feel like they're their friends. They feel that there's that connection and relatability there. And the algorithm feeds off that. So that's what goes viral ultimately, is that more information, sensationalist information, also stuff that is very provocative, verging on conspiratorial. So if it's something that's very against what's happening in the public health domain, we've seen this rise of what's called conspirituality. So kind of spiritual ways in which we might be leaning towards certain supplements to help with our spiritual health that might help with incurable diseases and chronic conditions, because they can't go to a GP, traditional kind of clinician, and get the support, health and medication they need. They're turning towards these types of supplements to support them in their spiritual journey. And so we see these rise of these what's called conspiritual influencers, or healers as they're kind of known as, which is a real kind of new wave of certainly red flags with the kind of influencer shifts and trends that we've seen. And I don't think it's all necessarily sinister, though. I sound like I'm being quite dystopian. I think genuinely these influencers can find some of these supplements beneficial and helpful, but it's that one size fits all model that can be very problematic when they are promoting this en masse. And I think that's something that has to be in the mind of the consumers that are following these types of influencers. So
we've got two, it sounds like we've got two things. We've got the message and then the mediums, and Livia has been talking about, we have some tools and structures to make sure that the messages are accurate, and some people are not following that and being quite irresponsible. But then, Rachel, it sounds like you're saying the way in which some of these messages and who does it and how they do it is also having a big effect, which it's difficult to see how the legislation is going to help that unless there's more stuff around it. But again, we can talk about that later. Becky, you've talked sometimes about echo chambers, and how does that work in terms of messaging around different supplements and food fads, if you like? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yes, 100%. It's something which I think really feeds nicely into what Rachel was saying as well, which is, an influencer will post a piece of content and it will kind of be siloed, but due to the nature of how we as consumers are taking in our social media feeds, and the way that the algorithm works means that you do end up getting put into these echo chambers where you'll watch one piece of content, you'll linger a little bit longer on it, suddenly you'll get served more and more versions of it, often more and more extreme versions of it. So if it started off as a small ailment, suddenly you're in a full-blown health crisis by the time you're getting to the bottom of the rabbit hole of where you're going on social media. So it can be a little bit difficult, and the difficulty as well is that nobody's really opting in to this. It's just something that's happening based on all these minute metrics, such as your watch time, or whether you saved it, whether you shared it with a friend, or even if you didn't press dislike but you just moved on from it. All of these tiny little bits of data are being used to inform this algorithm that is trying to read your mind, essentially, and it can be to a detriment. I've heard other social media consumers online who, they might have a problem with OCD, for example, and they keep on getting served these pieces of content that they're a little bit morbidly fascinated by, but it's actually to their detriment that they are over ruminating on these topics, because it keeps on getting served to them no matter how much they're trying to step away from it. So it's really difficult, I think, for consumers, especially on social media. And also, to Rachel's point, in terms of the authority that a lot of these creators can have, I mean, even something as simple as a verified tick, to certain consumers that will look like a staple of authority on a topic, when actually it is just a person with a social media account speaking to a topic that they don't necessarily have a qualification about. It's really interesting to talk about this within this current landscape of increased health anxiety and what social media is doing to feed into that. And then the final thing as well, also to Rachel's point, is on that kind of trend towards optimization, and it's very much the same on social media as well. A lot of what we see is teaching us and giving us resourceful content to optimize how we look, how we act, how we behave, our careers, our mental well-being, and our physical well-being. This all feeds into this, looking for shortcuts to supplement our lives, and these food supplements can be a big part of that as well.
Okay, thanks so much, Becky. We need to move on and talk about the laws that are in place, because we're making this sound like it's a Wild West, and there are things that are in place designed to protect consumers. So we're going to find out what they are and then really dig into how well they're working and what might need to change. So Livia, again, I'm going to ask you for some nice definitions about what's the difference between medicines and supplements, and why is that important in terms of the legislation?
Yes, Liz, of course. So let me start by saying that we are talking about two totally different categories of products which belong to two distinct legal framework and have different purposes and mechanism of action. So food supplements, as I said, going back to Article 2 definition, are first of all part of the European food safety framework, that it's one of the strictest food safety framework in the world, and provide a high level of consumer protection. Food supplements have a nutritional or physiological effect. They do not pretend to prevent or treat any disease. I will give you a concrete example, because talking about nutritional physiological, maybe people will not understand. When I was a child and I had a cold, my Greek grandmother was preparing me a big glass of fresh orange juice, for instance. So the scientific reason behind, because behind tradition, there is also science, and this has been confirmed by a claim authorized by EFSA, is that vitamin C contributes to the normal functioning of the immune system. So my grandmother was not trying to treat my cold with a glass of orange juice, but to contribute to the normal functioning of my immune system. So supplements are foods, and as foods, the general rule in the European regulatory system is that food needs to be safe. If there is unsafe food on the market, they should be withdrawn immediately from the market, and is the responsibilities of companies, of food business operators, to guarantee that the food they place on the European market is safe. The authority, the Food Safety Authority, so the authority responsible for food supplements is EFSA, so the European Food Safety Authorities. A medicine is defined, on the other hand, by Article 1 of Directive 83 of 2001 and has a different function. So a medicine can treat, prevent, or diagnose or restore, correct, or modify physiological function by exerting a pharmacological, immunological, or metabolic action. So we are in another, let's say, category of product, and the authority that is responsible for the safety of medicines is the European Medicines Agency, EMA. Also, and another important element, in medicines, there is a principle, which is the risk-benefit principle, which means that a doctor, before prescribing you a medicine, will weigh the risk-benefit of giving you that product, that medicine, and therefore there can be absolutely a risk when taking a medicine. So I hope I have explained the really two different regulatory framework purposes and also authorities of reference. Just last sentence that might be also very important to say. According to the WHO, health is not merely the absence of a disease, but it's a state of complete physical and mental and social well-being. And that's where food supplement might contribute, but do not, as I said, neither treat nor prevent any disease.
Okay. Thank you. That's really helpful. And this, I think the phrase contributing to seems important here. And maybe we'll come back to that later. Julie, you said you were at the recent EU Consumer Summit, which was held when Belgium had the presidency of the EU earlier this year. And you said that there's nothing preventing consumers from buying food supplements that are at best totally unuseful, at worst potentially dangerous. They're quite strong words, Julie. Can you explain why you think that's the case and other concerns that Testa Shah has?
Yes, of course. I will try to summarize our point of view because there is a lot to say. And in my response, I will partly also reply to what Livia just said. But contrary to what Livia said, I don't think the distinction between medicines and food supplements is very clear. When you read the definition, I think most of the people don't always understand the difference. And we have just published today the results of a survey that we conducted a few days ago, which shows that 44% of the respondents find the distinction between food supplements and medicines unclear. When we say, and Livia mentioned it as well, food supplements cannot prevent or cure disease. They cannot claim that. But do you understand the difference between, for example, a food supplement which states maintains urinary comfort and a medicine which says prevents cystitis? It's not clear in people's mind, and our survey showed it. And we think the confusion is also reinforced by the fact that food supplements are sold in pharmacies. Their packaging is very similar to medicines. So we would like that the definition of food supplements is made clear again, because we don't think it's clear enough today. The efficacy of food supplement is also a real question. So as you maybe know, there is a regulation about health claims that food supplements can show on their packaging. And they should not be false, they should not be misleading, ambiguous, they should be based on scientific evidence, and they should not encourage excessive consumption. But in practice, what we find is that the situation is very different, and that consumers are not sufficiently protected. So let's talk, for example, about the claims for plant-based food supplements. There are today more than 2,000 claims that are still being assessed by EFSA and that are considered on hold in the meantime. The reason behind this is because the assessment was blocked a long time ago by the European Commission following pressure from the industry, because the first assessment of these claims were negative. So since then, national countries have adopted different approaches with regard to these claims. So some allow these claims, some forbid them, some allow them with certain conditions. So it makes it all a bit messy. But let's take Belgium, for example. In Belgium, these claims are allowed, while they have not been validated, and we cannot consider that they are scientifically proven. And what we see is that manufacturers today do not hesitate to add ingredients that can benefit from an on-hold claim to get around the rules on advertising for food supplements. So let me give you an example. There is a food supplement in Belgium called Akkermansia, for example. So this one contains intestinal bacteria that are supposed to promote weight loss. But the manufacturer is not allowed to make this claim about weight loss linked to this bacteria because it's not approved, and there is today no evidence to support this claim. So what does the manufacturer do? He adds green tea in the product, and then he can state on the packaging that this product helps you lose weight, because this claim for green tea is actually on hold. So this is for us misleading, because consumers believe that the claim refers to the bacteria and not to green tea. Other issue I would like to raise is safety. So most people think that food supplements are harmless because they are natural or they are herbal. Our surveys show that 40% of the people who are taking food supplements think that they are always without danger. But what is the situation today? So yes, of course, the manufacturer has to submit a dossier to the public authority to receive a notification number. And in this dossier, you need to have information about, of course, the non-toxicity of the active substances. But today, we see that many food supplements are composed of several plants, and there are potential interaction between these plants. And the studies today are generally carried out on a single plant or a single active ingredient, but not on the final product. And we have also seen on the market food supplements that are dangerous, even with a notification number. For example, food supplements that contain natural statin to lower cholesterol, which have the same side effects as medical statins medicine that you can only buy with a medical prescription. And finally, with regard to safety, we know that food supplements can interact with medicine. For example, St. John's wort can interact with the contraceptive pill. It can lead to an undesirable pregnancy. It can lead to bleeding. Food supplements can also lead to overconsumption. For example, overconsumption of vitamin D for children, which can lead to stunted growth. So there are real concrete effects on people's health. And unfortunately, we have seen that the controls are not sufficient today. Just to give you two examples, insufficient control on the claims. We have just filed a complaint about the very well-known food supplement. He had 5 prohibited claims on its website and leaflet. We have also seen insufficient control on the composition. We found very big difference in concentration of active ingredients between what is stated in on the packaging and what we could actually measure in laboratory. So this shows for us that the controls that are made today are insufficient and that they cannot fully guarantee safety for consumers.
Okay, thank you, Julie. That's really helpfully unpacked in many different aspects. Because we don't have, we could talk about this for much longer, but because we're quite short of time, I want to obviously give Livia a chance to come back on that. It feels like you probably have a lot in common in terms of what you want to see for those controls to be better used. What would you like to see changed in terms of the monitoring and the regime that we have in place? Let's think about what positive changes we want. Livia, that's
a question for me, Olivia. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then
First of all, Liz, yes, I will tell you so, but I would like also to have the chance to raise some points. So, In the legislation, the European regulatory framework that I briefly described, given the short amount of time, there are also different phases before marketing a food supplement. Julie mentioned some, related to the specific Belgian case, but let me say that we can divide this into pre-market phase, post-market phase, okay? Pre-market, most of the European member states have a mandatory notification system, like the one of Belgium, that require the submission of a thorough documentation related to the product manufacturing, to the good hygiene practices, to the compliance with good manufacturing practices, to the quality standards. And we as EHPM, we also developed the EHPM quality guide, where you can find a checklist of all things that the food business operator can need to check. Those systems are really strict national regimes that are imposing, let's say, controls on a pre-market phase. Then after the market, there are also controls that are done by the food national safety authorities that can be done at the factory or at the at the shop, like in the pharmacies or in the health stores, and they really go and measure all the elements. So it's not an unregulated field. Then we also have post-market controls. In many European countries, we have what is called nutri-vigilance. Belgium just adopted a mandatory vigilance system, but this, let me say, France has a vigilance system from 2009 for food supplements. Italy has one. Portugal has one. So, there are systems that allow the healthcare provider or the consumer to notify potential adverse events that are potentially related to the intake of a supplement. On claims, and I will end this here and tell you what I would like to see change. The general rule, and I'm perfectly aware about the 2000 claims on hold, and we as EHPM, we have presented a proposal to address this to the European Commission 3 years ago, and the response was that this was not a priority at that time, because it's a priority for the consumer to solve the situation, but it's a priority for the industry too, to have more clear, to have legal certainty, around the European common market. But the general rule is that these claims, let's say, on hold, can be used if they meet certain conditions. And this is the case, of course, of Belgium, where they can only use those claims if they are sufficiently scientific substantiated by the producer. Let me give you another example. In the Netherlands, the Dutch companies need to put a disclaimer on the product saying the claim has not received an authorization from EFSA yet. So there are systems in place to monitor the safety of food supplement at all stages of the product marketing and distribution. And then there are other examples, but I'm not going, to say. What I want to see is change, more harmonization. What Julie said, it's true. We as a consumer, we are confronted to different rules, and this is not something that we want. We want a harmonization of maximum levels of vitamins and minerals. We want this issue of the botanical claims to be addressed and solved, but we want that this is done in a realistic and concrete way, and most importantly, that the European institution takes into consideration the voice of stakeholders, both consumers want and industry wants. That's what we want. That's what we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Livia. Julie, what would you like to see as Testachat to improve the market and the way these claims are handled?
So let's start by agreeing with Livia on the fact that we want more uniformity, harmonization. Of course, it's not normal that some countries allow the use of health claim for plant-based products, some others don't, some others allow them with a disclaimer. We need uniformity, we need clarity. Livia also mentioned the system of nutri-vigilance. It has entered into force in Belgium quite recently, but more or less no one is aware of this system. So we really need information from our public authorities about this system. We have seen that this system has been efficient, for example, in the Netherlands for problems with some plants. So it is efficient, it is useful, but consumers today do not know about it. But it's very recent, so we will let the chance to our authorities to work on this. As I said, we would like a bit more control from our authorities, and really this is a bit hard to conclude with this because it opens a really wider debate, but we would like, as I said in the beginning, a clearer definition of what a food supplement is and what it is not, especially compared to pharmaceutical products. And in Testasha's opinion, today, plant-based food supplements are not meeting the requirements to be food supplements. We think they should pertain to the category of traditional herbal medicines, and this would mean only be sold in pharmacies with a leaflet, with higher requirements in terms of efficacy and safety. So this is our request, but I end up with this. But I know it would open another debate with Livia. But it's important for me to share our opinion on this.
So, Livia, just very quickly.
Yeah, just to say another message, important message: consumers need to read the label and the indication the manufacturer puts on the label, because this is absolutely important. Their use of food supplements is very well described in the label, and if a consumer is taking medication or is taking more supplements at the same time, needs to seek medical advice. If there is a medical condition, medical advice. That's
Okay,
I would like to say.
Yep, that's a good point, and I think both agreeing on harmonization, uniformity, so you don't have these different situations across countries which could be next door to each other. Supposing all of this was all in place, Rachel, I just want to ask you, do you think that makes any difference to consumers? How much are they going to notice disclaimers when they're bombarded with lots of messages online?
I think it definitely will make a difference. I think it already has a little bit in terms of consumers being a little bit more critically aware of what products might be more consumer rather than medical products. Certainly in kind of health tech, when it comes to supplements, I think it's because it's such a grey area, or it's very hard for the everyday person who doesn't have that clinical background or training or expertise that's in this panel. I think it's incredibly hard to discern exactly how it might help. And I think there was a comment in the chat about when it does interact with other medicines. I think that really needs to be flagged up increasingly. But I also think if you transfer that into an online space, the problem is that influencers who are promoting these products are often kind of weaponizing the medical terminology or the science evidence-based terminology, and saying things like, this is evidence-based, this will optimize your health in this way, or will transform your health in that way. And actually, if you dig into and go and follow through where this evidence base comes from for the products that aren't, actually reputable products that aren't regulated, it's because you'll have a look where the evidence base link takes you, and it might be a TED talk. A colleague of mine was looking into this, and it ended up in an obituary was one of the links that it took them to. So I think for the everyday consumer, unless you're digging and going through all of those layers of doing your own bit of research and following those links to try and actually discern what is reputable information or not, it's very hard to kind of unpack it all, because evidence base has really been weaponized. And I'm sure Becky has seen that kind of surge with influencers picking up on the scientific jargon and using that to promote products which haven't been regulated, or which shouldn't be promoted as they are online.
Yeah, thanks. That's useful. I suppose for me, we're moving into how things are communicated and who's communicating it, and obviously the platforms which influencers use and which consumers are on Should they be taking more responsibility if people who are promoting these products are weaponizing the terms and are being quite clearly misleading? Becky, I'd like to ask you about that.
It's a really interesting one, because what I think we saw from the pandemic was those automated like COVID information pop-ups on content appearing alongside those user-generated and creator-generated posts. And we see the same as well for physical acts, like, dangerous stunts that you see people jumping out of planes and doing skydiving. It says, obviously, do not try this at home. We're no stranger to those kinds of pieces of warnings, but we aren't seeing the same kinds of warnings being given for these other health or wellness related pieces of advice. So it's interesting because we can see that the software and the technology is out there and the platforms will do it for certain things, but they won't for others. And the question is, what do they deem as necessary to intervene on? And actually as well, could there even be a risk of maybe a numbness to it all? I mean, just as a British person who's just come back from America, it's very shocking to me when I see, the pharmaceutical advertising on television that lists off this big, long list of side effects as far as death, cancer, etc. from taking these things, and they have to, because it's the regulation, they have to read them off during the advertisement. And I wonder for American consumers of that, are they just numb to that big long list? It's shocking for me because it's a big cultural difference that we have. But to them, is it just par for the course? So it's interesting as in the case of if that was to be introduced further field on social media, would we become numb to it, and then the efficacy kind of wears off? And then I guess finally on that, it's touching on the kind of financial incentivization and the social commerce side of things, because what could help improve responsibility there, I suppose, is giving those social media influencers who are doing commercial partnerships with these kinds of supplements and promoting it to their audience, is just giving them ample time to actually, try a product for themselves. We know that, the thing with supplements is you can't actually see a tangible benefit. If it was, promoting makeup or fashion, for example, you can see it with your own two eyes. But supplements is more of an internal process. It's not visible, and so therefore you're relying on, the word and testimony of who's talking about it, and through that, inevitably, the best salesperson will win. So, what could actually help is, just for the brands to be giving the influencers the space to actually try it, test it for themselves. They're not promoting a full bottle of supplements, but an empty one, which shows that they have actually used it themselves and gone on the journey with it, so that at least they can speak to some credibility and authority and authenticity even to their experience with the product.
Okay, thanks very much. And we're getting some interaction on the chat, pointing out some existing I suppose certifications or labels which show that a product has been properly notified. So perhaps also these things are going to be part of the toolkit that consumers could have to be sure that they're taking something that's going to be likely to perform in the way that they want. We've overrun already, but I've got a time for a final question to all of you. I'm going to divide these up. So for Julie and Livia, I want you to think about the new European Parliament that you have. It's got a 5-year programme. What message do you want to give to the EU about how to improve the food supplement market in the next 5 years? Julie, you can go first.
Thank you. Sorry, maybe I will repeat myself, but I think one of the most important thing for us is really that we want a clearer definition of food supplements. I find it a bit funny because we keep on saying like they're sold everywhere in any shops. There is a lot of advertisement around them. They pertain to the food category, but at the same time we say, consumers, you should be really careful and you should always read the leaflet. So it's quite contradictory. We think that plant-based food supplements should pertain to the category, as I said, of herbal medicinal products with a higher requirement for safety, for efficacy. We want more, it would lead also to more difficulty to combine different plants, because the combination of plants would have to be documented, and there would be an obligation to provide this famous leaflet that does not exist today for all food supplements. So we think this would we need clarity. I think this is something that has been shown today in the discussions. We need more clarity as to what pertains to what category, what could be the side effects or not. So my message is a clear definition of food supplements, please.
Clear definition is the starting point. Okay, Livia, to you, what's your message from your members?
Yes, so my message is that, as I said already, stakeholders needs to be effectively included into the decision-making process in an efficient way, in order that also to take into consideration, let's say, the concrete proposals that we both have from the consumers and from the industry. And this technical proposal needs to be taken into consideration by EU decision-making in the EU decision-making process. So let's say more efficient and transparent EU decision-making process that takes into consideration concrete proposals from stakeholders.
And I'm sure that Julie and yourself will have more conversations as that develops. I'm going to ask Rachel and Becky what their advice they would give to a consumer, someone who's online and offline, in this world of different health and food supplements. What would be your advice to them to use them smartly? Rachel, first of all.
Oh, okay. So such a good question. I think because it's such a minefield of where to get your health information now, particularly when it comes to food supplements, I would say if you can and want to start using a new food supplement, go to your clinician and get the guidance from them, whether it is appropriate to be using, whether it does intersect with other medications, but ultimately whether it could be beneficial or harmful to your health. If the consumer is wanting to follow an influencer because they do think that person is reputable, which I know a huge portion of the population is now doing, then look through the science, look through the links that they have attached to this information, and make sure that you're seeing that evidence-based research and actually doing a little bit of digging and research. So I would say clinician first if possible. If you are going to an influencer, do make sure that they've got the science there to back it up.
Okay, thank you very much. Super quickly, Becky.
Of course, I would just say that media literacy is key, and that extends to social media literacy as well. There is no clear definition between who is just somebody posting online and a social media influencer, and therefore, the trust is also a little bit diffuse as well. So just really start to interrogate who you're getting your advice from. No matter how friendly of a face they are, is it the right advice for you?
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you to Livia, to Julie, Rachel and Becky. You've all been fantastic. And to everyone who's been watching live and watching back and joining in. Every month we pick up a key issue. You can watch back all of our Start Talking webinars at www.euroconsumers.org/webinars. And we'll see you next month when we're going to start talking about the letter report, which is all about whether Europe's single market needs to be bigger and bolder. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks ever so much. Thanks everyone again for attending and for listening. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Power to the people. Someone used to sing. And while singing is not our expertise, empowering people, empowering you is what we do. And in tune. How? We test, analyze and compare products and services to ensure that they meet what you are looking for and comply with the law. We inform, advise, support and represent consumers, and we do this in chorus, which is to say in several countries at the same time. Belgium, Italy, Spain, Portugal and Brazil. Then we dialogue, collaborate and sue companies if needed to make sure people's and your needs are in the best hands. And in the end, we improve the market and we all win. Maybe it does deserve a song. What do you think? Euro Consumers. Empower people, improve the market.